Anybody feeling a little awkward? I know I am. So what's going on in my body right now when I did that? Heart rate's elevated a little bit. Start to get a little nervous. Mind starts telling me things like, oh, I think I'm having memory slip. They're judging me. And it turns out that that kind of discomfort is a really, really important thing. In fact, when surveyed, over 500 successful CEOs, executives, businessmen all say that the number one trait to become successful in business is to be able to be comfortable when you're feeling discomfort. They didn't pick education. They didn't pick years of experience, open-mindedness. They chose to be able to deal effectively with discomfort. And it's this phenomenon that I want to talk a little bit about today. I want to talk about why it's such an important thing, why we feel discomfort at all, and some techniques that I've read in a book, The Charisma Myth, that can kind of help you deal with this and get better with it. So why is it such an important thing? Maybe a story to illustrate. Imagine you're getting prepared for a meeting with an investor for your product, maybe a new client, maybe a high-powered executive. You prepared for weeks, all night, going through all your stuff, preparing. The day of the meeting comes, you walk into the executive's office, sit down, and he says, before you sit down, I just want to tell you, I'm only having this meeting because a friend of mine suggested it. I know what you're selling, and I'm not at all interested. It's a pretty uncomfortable situation. Now, if that was me, I'd kind of sit back down. I'd lose the ability to have direct eye contact. Your body language kind of changes. And at that point, the meeting's over. You're basically walking out, and all of your prep work is out the window. If we can't effectively communicate when we're feeling discomfort, when our body goes into fight or flight, we cannot navigate complex situations, and we cannot control the outcomes that we would like. And the reason for this really goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, right? Fight or flight, this response that we're dealing with, was really important. And in many cases, it may have been the difference between eating lunch or being lunch, right? This survival skill that kept us alive and has brought us to where we are now made a lot of sense back then. But in the modern world, it still makes some sense in some cases, but in our day-to-day lives, like presenting, getting up in front of people, you guys aren't going to eat me. I don't think so. Hope not. It doesn't really apply. So what are some of the things that we can do to try to control this, to get better at this, so when we're feeling uncomfortable, when we feel stressed, we can still communicate effectively? Mike Emo a few months ago mentioned the book. Some of you may have seen that presentation called The Charisma Myth. It's a fantastic book, and it will hopefully go on our library when we get that up and running. The premise of the book is simple, that charisma is not something that you're born with. It's not genetic. In fact, it's something that can be taught, it can be learned, it can be tuned, it can be honed. It's really just a series of human behaviors targeted correctly. So she goes on to also say, she actually cites the survey I mentioned at the beginning, that the most important part of remaining charismatic is to be able to do so when you're feeling uncomfortable. Look at some of the past presidents. Bill Clinton's known to be very charismatic when pressed by the media on difficult issues. Monica Lewinsky, through all the other things that happened in his administration, he was still able to remain charismatic. And a lot of people gave him a free pass because of it. So she comes up with a few techniques, and she's mentioned some things in this book that I'm going to share with you today that I'm practicing actively and really trying to kind of get into, and I find them to be really, really, really helpful. The first three things she mentions are kind of techniques to deal with it once you're feeling distressed. The first one is to destigmatize it. And what that means is to simply, when you're feeling stressed, understand that what you're feeling is a human thing. It exists, it's got a name, it's something you can see in the body. Everybody feels it. Every single day when we communicate, we go through a whole wide series of emotions. Even the person that's making you feel discomfort is feeling it. So knowing that in the midst of it, we take some of the power away. The second is to negate negativity. And this is a big one for me. When you start to feel the panic, when you start to feel a little stressed, your brain starts telling you stuff, right? Run, do this, this person's thinking this. And you start to get all these ideas of what people might be thinking of you. But they're all wrong. They're all based on, limited information, lack of true context. As an example, Beth, if you came into work today feeling just crappy, stomach ache, headache, cold, you weren't going to stay the whole day. You were just coming in just to get some work done and you were leaving. But I come into your office right when you get there, sit down, start asking you a bunch of questions about a project we're working on. Your body language changes. You're kind of like not paying attention to me. You're looking around, not giving me your full attention, and kind of seeming irritated, right? I may go back to my cube thinking, wow, that doesn't like me at all, right? And so my interactions with you are going to change. And that's based on completely false information. You weren't feeling it. My brain was saying, well, based on your body language, it doesn't really care. So ignore the voice. Don't let it lead you astray. It doesn't know what it's talking about. It's dealing with incorrect information. And the other thing, and this is a really interesting technique, is to rewrite reality. And the example she goes through in the book is, let's say you're driving to work, this car cuts you off, right? Just almost hits you. And just before you can, give them the signal, it speeds off at about 100 miles an hour. And so this, in a lot of cases, makes people pretty stressed out, makes them angry. You have road rage, you have all this sort of thing. And if you're going to an important meeting, that's enough just to put you into the wrong context. You're not going to be charismatic, you're not going to be friendly, you're not going to be happy. So what can you do in these cases? Well, the rewrite reality thing is kind of interesting. You don't know why this person was speeding. You don't know why they cut you off, right? You're just mad that it happened. But would you be mad if you were to find out that this woman who cut you off had a choking baby in the back seat and was rushing to the hospital? Probably wouldn't be so upset about that, right? It's understandable. So why not tell yourself that? And it turns out, through something called the placebo effect that Mike actually touched on, just by going through the motions of thinking that and creating that story in your mind, it's enough to change what your brain's doing. And you actually feel quite different about it. So those are three things. Destigmatize, remove the negativity, and rewrite the story. But knowing these techniques isn't at all helpful unless you practice stuff. And this is the fun stuff. This is the stuff you can do every day. And 2 of them I've done. 1 I'm not going to touch for a while. The first one is simple. Eye contact. Right? I talk to Rick in a meeting, and when the conversation stops, hold eye contact for a few more seconds. Starts to make you feel a little uncomfortable, but you can kind of learn what it's like, what it feels like, what's happening in your body, and you'll realize that Rick thinks no different of me. I'm looking a little bit longer. Play with personal space. I could stand next to Loris, this whole speech like this, a little bit closer than I might want, right? And you do that in an elevator with someone, and you can feel your body actually say, no, get away, don't, it's too close, too close. So I do that a lot. That's kind of fun. But here's the one I'll never do. I would love for someone to try it and tell me how it goes. So you're walking into work, right? And you have your elevator and your whole mass of people going to their floors. Elevator opens. You let everybody in, right? Then you walk in last, and you turn your back to the elevator door and just stand like this looking at them. And to me, that would be really, really awkward. But apparently, people do it. And then, or you could do like what Beth did and sing in the middle of the back next to it. So those are 3 things we can do to practice it. So just in summary, I want to mention this book again, Charisma Method. If you're interested in this sort of thing, like kind of the psychology of human behavior, it's a fantastic book. It has lots of great things. And really, this is the core of it. It's the most important thing, is to be comfortable when you're uncomfortable. I named 3 different techniques to deal with it and a couple things that you can do to practice it. And with that said and Bob waving, I'm going to end my speech here. And I'll